Isabella's voice cut through the chatter of the diner like a sharp blade. The entire room seemed to suck in its breath at once. Conversations died. Cutlery froze mid-air. All eyes turned to the main table, where Robert Miller, the most influential businessman in town, sat next to his fiancée Victoria and his son Ethan, a mere 9-year-old, holding a glass of juice while a steaming plate of spaghetti sat in front of him. Victoria stood up so quickly that her chair scraped against the wooden floor. Her green eyes sparkled with icy fury. She pointed an accusing finger at Isabella, who stood a few feet away, her order pad trembling in her hands. "Who do you think you are to accuse me of something like that?" Victoria's voice was low but laced with venom. "You're just a miserable waitress who doesn't know her place. I could buy this entire diner and fire you with a snap of my fingers." Isabella felt the heat rise in her neck. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her eyes fixed on Victoria. She wasn't going to back down. Not this time. "I saw what you did," Isabella forced her voice, to come out steady. "I was bringing the order from the next table and saw you take something out of your pocket and throw it onto the boy's plate while he was looking at his father's phone." Robert's face went pale. He looked at Victoria, then at Ethan, who had dropped his glass and was watching everything with wide eyes, his mouth still full of spaghetti. "This is absurd," Victoria growled, turning to Robert. "Honey, are you going to let this girl disrespect me like this in front of everyone?" Robert hesitated. Isabella saw doubt settle in his eyes. He was powerful, feared, used to being obeyed, but now he was torn between the woman he loved and the accusation he had just heard. "Robert," Isabella said, her voice carrying that authoritative tone he used in business meetings, "are you sure about what you're saying? Because an accusation like that is very serious." Isabella tightened her grip on the order pad. She felt all eyes in the diner fixed on her. Some customers were already holding their phones, ready to record. Mrs. Johnson, the diner manager, watched from the kitchen entrance with a look of sheer panic. "I am sure," Isabella replied. Her voice did not tremble. "I saw it with my own eyes." Victoria stepped forward, invading Isabella's space. She was taller, wearing expensive heels, and her red dress seemed to scream power and money. The perfume she wore cost more than Isabella earned in an entire month of work. "You're finished," Victoria whispered, so close that only Isabella could hear. "I will destroy you. I will make sure no one in this town gives you a job. I will sue you for defamation. By the time I'm done, you'll be begging to go back to washing dishes." Isabella took a step back, but kept her gaze steady. Something inside her refused to yield. Perhaps it was the memory of her own mother, who had raised 3 children alone, without ever bowing her head to anyone. Perhaps it was the image of the boy sitting at that table, unaware of the danger he might be in. "I will not back down," Isabella said loudly for everyone to hear, "not when a child could be at risk." The entire diner held its breath. Mrs. Johnson finally stepped out from behind the counter and walked towards them with hurried steps. She was a woman in her 50s, with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun, and her face carried decades of experience dealing with difficult customers. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Victoria, please," Mrs. Johnson began, her hands clasped in front of her. "Let's resolve this calmly. Isabella is an exemplary employee. She has never had any issues here. I'm sure there has been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Victoria spun on her heels, directing all her anger at Mrs. Johnson. "Your employee just accused me of trying to poison a child. That is not a misunderstanding, it's a crime. It's slander." Robert finally stood up. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had a presence that dominated any room. His graying temples and the impeccable cut of his suit revealed a man who had built an empire from scratch and feared nothing and no one. "Ethan," Robert said, looking at his son, "did you eat anything from your plate?" The boy shook his head, his eyes still wide. "Just 2 bites, Dad, when you showed me the funny video on your phone." Robert looked at the plate. The spaghetti was almost untouched. He picked up the fork, stirred the pasta, examining each piece as if he might find something suspicious there. He saw nothing out of the ordinary. "Isabella," Robert said, turning to her, "you said you saw Victoria put something on the plate. What exactly did you see?" Isabella swallowed hard. All the words she had rehearsed in her head seemed to evaporate, but she forced her mouth to move, to form the sentences that needed to be said. "I saw Mrs. Victoria take a small envelope out of her designer handbag," Isabella said, pointing to the handbag resting on the back of Victoria's chair. It was a small white envelope, the size of a condiment packet. She looked around, saw that you were distracted with your phone, and the boy was also looking at the screen. Then she opened the envelope and poured the contents onto the spaghetti. After that, she stirred quickly with the fork to mix it. The silence that followed was thick as fog. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Her face was red with rage, her nostrils flaring. "That's a lie!" Victoria exploded. "That's a lie! She's making all this up because she's jealous of me, because I have everything she'll never have." "I'm not jealous of anyone," Isabella replied. Her voice was now firmer, clearer. "I'm just doing what's right. A child could be in danger." Robert looked at Victoria. He really looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time. There was something in her posture, the way her hands trembled slightly, her rapid breathing that sparked a flicker of distrust in his chest. "Victoria," Robert said slowly, "show me your bag." "What?" Victoria took a step back. "Are you kidding me? You're going to believe this waitress instead of believing me." "Show the bag," Robert repeated. His voice was colder now. "If you have nothing to hide, show the bag." Victoria looked around, searching for support, looking for a way out. The other customers watched in absolute silence. A woman at the corner table held her phone up, clearly recording everything. A man in a grey suit by the window had wide eyes and his mouth slightly open. "I will not be humiliated like this," Victoria said, clutching the bag to her chest. "I won't allow you to treat me like a criminal." "So you refuse to show it?" Robert asked. Victoria stepped back again. Her heels tapped against the chair leg, and she almost lost her balance. Robert reached out to help her, but she jerked away. "I don't need to prove anything to anyone," Victoria said. Her voice was shrill, much less so than a mere waitress who didn't know her place. Isabella felt the anger pulse in her temples. She clenched her fists at her sides, her nails digging into her palms, but kept her voice calm when she responded. "My place is to protect a child," Isabella said, "and that's exactly what I'm doing." Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, placing herself between Isabella and Victoria. "Mr. Miller," the manager said with a trembling voice, "perhaps it would be best to take the dish for analysis. We can call the authorities and conduct a proper investigation. We don't need to turn this into a public scandal." "Public scandal?" Victoria let out a humorless laugh. "This is already a public scandal. Look around. Everyone is watching. Everyone is recording. Tomorrow this will be in all the newspapers, on all the social media. The fiancée of Robert Miller, accused of poisoning the child." She turned to Robert, and now tears were streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "Robert, please," Victoria pleaded. "You know me. You know I would never do something like this. I love Ethan as if he were my own son. You know that." Ethan sat quietly in his chair, watching everything with wide eyes. He held the napkin so tightly that his fingers turned white. Robert ran a hand over his face. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last 5 minutes. His certainties were crumbling, his world turning upside down. "I need to be sure," Robert said. "After all, Ethan is my son. I need to make sure he's safe." Victoria took a step back, then another. Her face was contorted with rage and despair. She looked at Isabella with such intense hatred that the waitress felt a chill run down her spine. "You will pay for this," Victoria whispered. "I swear you will pay." Then she grabbed her bag, spun on her heels, and marched toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the diner's silence. All eyes followed her until she crossed the door and disappeared into the street. Robert stood frozen by the table, staring at the plate of spaghetti as if it contained all the answers in the universe. Ethan slowly stood up and grabbed his father's hand. "Dad," the boy said in a small voice, "I'm scared." Robert pulled his son into a tight embrace, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to organize the chaotic thoughts swirling in his mind. When he finally released Ethan, he looked at Isabella. There was something different in his eyes now. It wasn't anger or distrust. It was something closer to gratitude mixed with fear. "Thank you," Robert said softly. "If you really saw what you say you saw, thank you for speaking up." Isabella felt unable to form words. Her legs were shaking. She felt as if she had run a marathon. Mrs. Johnson approached the table, carefully picked up the plate, and held it away from her body as if it were a bomb about to explode. "I'll put this in a sealed container," the manager said, "and we'll call the authorities. They'll know what to do." Robert nodded. He pulled his phone from his pocket, dialed a number, and waited. "Detective Martin," Robert said when someone answered on the other end. "I need you to come to the diner immediately. We have a situation." As Robert explained what had happened over the phone, Isabella felt her legs finally give way. She leaned against the nearest chair, her breath coming in short gasps. She had crossed a line, confronted one of the most powerful women in the city, and now there was no turning back. The next few hours would reveal whether she had done the right thing or if she had just destroyed her own life. 20 minutes later, Detective Martin walked through the diner door with 2 police officers by his side. He was a medium-height man with a protruding belly pressing against his uniform. Shirt, thinning hair carefully combed to disguise his receding hairline. His small, shrewd eyes swept the room, taking in every detail, every expression, every movement. Robert immediately stood up and walked over to him. The 2 men greeted each other with a firm handshake. Isabella watched from a distance, still leaning against the wall near the kitchen entrance. Her legs were still shaky, but she refused to sit down. She needed to be on her feet, alert, ready for anything. "Detective," Robert said, keeping his voice low, but it was clear enough for Isabella to hear. "Thank you for coming so quickly. The situation is delicate," the officer nodded, pulling out a small notebook from his pocket. "I understand, Robert. Please explain what happened here." Robert recounted everything from the beginning. His voice was steady, but Isabella noticed the subtle tremor in his hands as he pointed to the plate, now sealed inside a plastic container on the counter. Ethan remained seated at the table, very quiet, his eyes fixed on his father. When Robert finished, the officer looked at Isabella. "You are the waitress who made the accusation?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Isabella replied, straightening her posture. "My name is Isabella Miller. I've worked here for 3 years. And are you absolutely sure of what you saw?" Isabella swallowed hard. The weight of that question was immense. One wrong word, one hesitation, and everything could crumble. But she had seen clearly. "I'm sure," Isabella said. "I saw Mrs. Victoria take a small envelope from her designer handbag and pour the contents onto the boy's plate. Then she quickly stirred it with a fork to mix." The officer scribbled something in his notebook. One of the police officers beside him began taking pictures of the sealed plate, the table and the surroundings. "And where is Mrs. Victoria now?" the officer asked. "She left," Robert replied. "After I asked her to show her handbag, she refused and walked out." The officer raised his eyebrows. "She refused to show her handbag?" "Yes, she said she wouldn't be humiliated and left." "Interesting." The officer wrote a few more lines. "We will need to take the plate for laboratory analysis, and I will need everyone present at the time of the incident to be available to testify." Mrs. Johnson approached, her hands nervously intertwined. "Officer Martin," she said, her voice trembling, "will this affect my diner? I've always kept everything within the law. I've never had any problems." "Calm down, Carmen," the officer replied with a wave of his hand. "You haven't done anything wrong. In fact, your employee may have prevented a tragedy. We will investigate and find the truth." Isabella felt a small relief upon hearing that, but the relief lasted only a few seconds before being replaced by a new wave of anxiety. What if she was wrong? What if what she had seen was just a misunderstanding? Victoria could sue her, ruin her life, fulfill all those whispered threats. The officer turned to Robert again. "Do you know your fiancée well?" Robert hesitated, running his hand through his hair, messing up his perfect hairstyle. "I've known her for 2 years, he replied. "We met at a charity event. She was charming, intelligent, sophisticated. I've never seen any signs that she could do something like this. Does she have any reason to want to harm your son?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Robert opened his mouth, closed it, trying to find words that made sense. "Ethan will inherit half of my fortune when he turns 21, Robert finally said, his voice dropping lower. "The other half would be divided between my wife and charities." "And what if something happened to Ethan before that?" Robert closed his eyes. The implication was too horrible to consider. "The entire fortune would go to my wife." The silence that followed was heavy. The officer wrote a few more lines, then put away the notebook. "We will investigate thoroughly," he said. "For now, I suggest you keep your distance from Victoria until we have more answers and keep your son safe." Robert nodded, his expression somber. The police officers finished photographing the scene and collected the container with the plate. The officer said goodbye and promised to return as soon as he had news from the laboratory. When they left, the diner remained in a strange silence. The few customers still there whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances at Robert and Ethan. Mrs. Johnson approached Isabella. "You did the right thing," the manager said softly. "It was brave, but it was also dangerous. That woman has power, money, influence." "I know," Isabella replied. Her voice came out weaker than she would have liked. "You need to be careful. People like that don't forget." Isabella nodded. She knew that. She knew the next few weeks, maybe months, would be difficult. But when she looked at Ethan, still sitting at the table next to his father, she saw only a scared child who could have been poisoned if she had stayed silent. Robert stood up and walked over to Isabella. He was much taller than her, and Isabella had to lift her chin to meet his eyes. "I don't know if you saved my son's life today," Robert said. "But I know you risked yourself to protect him, and for that I am grateful." Isabella didn't know how to respond. She just nodded. "If you need anything," Robert continued, pulling a card from his pocket, "anything, call me, lawyer, protection, whatever." Isabella took the card with trembling fingers. It was heavy, elegant, with embossed gold lettering. "Thank you, sir." Robert returned to the table, took Ethan by the hand, and the two left the diner. Isabella watched them through the window, seeing the businessman open the door of a shiny black car and help his son inside. Before closing the door, Robert looked back at the diner, and his eyes met Isabella's for a brief moment. There was gratitude there, but there was also fear. The diner began to empty. Customers paid their bills quickly and left, eager to escape the tension still hanging in the air. Mrs. Johnson closed the main door and turned the sign to closed. "Let's wrap it up for today," she said. "We all need to process what happened." Isabella went to the locker room to change out of her uniform. Her hands trembled so much that she had difficulty opening the locker. When she finally managed to take off her apron and put on her regular clothes, she sat on the bench and buried her face in her hands. She had done the right thing. She was sure of it, but the certainty did not dispel the fear that a shadow grew in her chest. Victoria was rich, powerful, connected. She knew the right people, had the right resources, could hire expensive lawyers, private investigators, and could make Isabella's life a living hell. And Isabella was just a waitress, an ordinary woman without resources, connections, or protection. When she left the locker room, Mrs. Johnson was waiting for her at the door. "Do you want me to call a cab?" asked the manager. "No need," Isabella replied. "I'll take the bus." "Isabella, listen." Mrs. Johnson held her arm. "You have my number. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me, understand?" Isabella nodded. Feeling her eyes burn with tears, she refused to let fall. She stepped out onto the street. The sun was already setting, painting the sky orange and purple. The air was cold, biting her skin through her thin shirt. She walked to the bus stop, sat on the cold metal bench, and waited. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "You made the biggest mistake of your life. I will make you regret being born." Isabella felt her blood run cold. Her fingers trembled as she held the phone. She looked around, but the street was empty. A few shops were closing, cars were passing by, and no one was paying attention to her. Another message came in. "Do you think you can accuse me and get away with it? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I will destroy you and everyone you love." The bus arrived. Isabella got on with shaky legs, tapped her card, sat at the back, gripping her phone so tightly her fingers hurt. She thought about replying, blocking the number, calling the police. But in the end, she just put the phone in her bag and closed her eyes. She had crossed a line today, and now she would have to face the consequences. When she got home, her mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of beans and rice filled Isabella's nostrils, bringing a hint of comfort. "How was your day?" her mother asked, not looking back, busy stirring the pot. Isabella didn't answer immediately. How could she explain? How could she tell that she might have saved a child's life, but at the same time destroyed her own? "It was tough," she finally said. Her mother turned, and something in Isabella's expression made her eyes widen. "What happened?" Isabella told her everything, every detail, every word, every look. Her mother listened in silence, her face growing paler. When Isabella finished, her mother pulled out a chair and sat heavily. "My daughter," she said, her voice trembling, "you did the right thing, but you also put yourself in danger. I know. This woman will come after you. People with money and power do not take challenges lightly." "I know, Mom." Her mother reached out and grasped Isabella's hand. "But I also know I raised you to do what is right, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous." Isabella felt the tears finally fall. She squeezed her mother's hand, seeking strength in that touch. "We will get through this together," her mother said. "You are not alone." Isabella nodded, wiping her tears with her other hand. But even with her mother's comforting words, the fear remained, coiled in her chest like a snake. That night, she barely slept. Every noise made her jump. Every shadow seemed a threat. Her phone vibrated several times with new messages from the unknown number, each one more threatening than the last. "Tomorrow you will wake up wishing you had stayed silent. I know where you live. I know where your family lives. This is just the beginning." Isabella blocked the number, but she knew it was useless. Victoria could get as many new numbers as she wanted, could hire as many people as she wanted to torment her. At 3 a.m., Isabella sat on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest, when she heard a noise outside, a car stopping, footsteps on the sidewalk, a knock at the door. Her heart raced. She got up slowly, walked to the window and peeked through the curtains. There was a black car parked in front of the house. 2 men in suits were at the door. One of them knocked again, harder this time. Isabella crept down the stairs as quietly as possible. Her mother was already in the living room, her face pale, holding the phone. "Who are they?" Isabella whispered. "I don't know, but I'm going to call the police." Before she could dial, a voice came from outside. "Isabella Ferreira. We are lawyers for Ms. Victoria Duarte. We need to speak with you now." Isabella exchanged a look with her mother. Fear was written on both their faces, but there was also something more. A silent determination that had been passed down from mother to daughter through generations of women who learned to resist. "Call the police," Isabella whispered to her mother. Then, taking a deep breath, she walked to the door. She didn't open it, just spoke loud enough to be heard from the other side. "It's 3 a.m. You don't have the right to be here at this hour." There was a pause. Then the voice responded, softer now, almost conciliatory. "We understand it's late, Miss Ferreira, but the matter is urgent. Our client is willing to reach a settlement, a generous settlement. We don't want this to escalate. We don't want you to be harmed." Isabella felt her anger rise in her throat. "How is this harming me?" she said, raising her voice. "Your client has been threatening me since I left the diner. She's been sending me messages saying she will destroy my life. And now you show up at my house in the middle of the night. This is harassment. This is intimidation." Another silence. She heard the men talking quietly among themselves. Then the voice returned. "We have a proposal, $50,000 in cash. All you need to do is sign a document saying you were mistaken, that you didn't see what you thought you saw, that it was a misunderstanding. $50,000. It was more. Isabella could earn in 2 years of work. She could pay her mother's debts, fix the leaking roof, buy a used car, have a little security, but it would also mean putting a child in danger. It would mean allowing Victoria to go unpunished. It would mean breaking the promise she had made to herself to never back down. "I won't," Isabella said. Her voice came out firm, clear, without hesitation. "I saw what I saw, and I won't lie." 100,000, the voice said immediately. $100,000 cash tomorrow, and you can start a new life far from here, away from all these problems. Isabella closed her eyes, felt the temptation pulling her, whispering promises of safety and comfort, but then she thought of Ethan's face, the boy's frightened eyes, the way he had clutched his father's hand. "You could offer $1 million, and the answer would be the same," Isabella said. "I don't lie, and I don't accept bribes." She heard footsteps retreating, the sound of car doors opening and closing, the engine starting, the car driving away down the quiet street. Isabella leaned her forehead against the door, her knees almost giving way. Her mother rushed to her and hugged her. "You are the bravest person I know," her mother whispered in her ear, "but I'm also very scared for you." Isabella allowed herself to stay there, for a moment in her mother's arms, letting the fear and exhaustion wash over her like a wave. Then she pulled away, wiped her face, and straightened her posture. "I'm scared too," she admitted, "but doing the right thing is worth it. It's always worth it." They returned to their rooms, but neither of them could sleep. Isabella lay there, staring at the ceiling, her heart still pounding in her chest, her mind spinning in circles. When dawn broke, she got up exhausted but determined. She took a shower, got dressed and went to the kitchen. Her mother was already making coffee. "Aren't you going to work today?" her mother asked. "I am. Life goes on." But when Isabella arrived at the bus stop, she found a group of journalists waiting, cameras, microphones, recorders. They all turned at once when they saw her. "Isabella Ferreira, is it true that you accused Victoria Duarte of trying to poison her stepson? Why would you make such a serious accusation? Victoria is saying that you are jealous of her and that you made everything up." Isabella took a step back, overwhelmed by the wall of people and equipment. Her heart raced. She didn't know what to say, how to respond, how to escape that situation. "I can't talk about this right now," she managed to say, "but people want to know the truth. Victoria is giving interviews saying that you are a liar. She said she will sue you for defamation and demands $1 million in damages. $1 million. The number spun in Isabella's head like a whirlwind. It was impossible. She would never have $1 million. Victoria knew that. It was just another form of pressure, another attempt to destroy her. "I saw what I saw," Isabella said, forcing her voice to rise above the noise. "And I told the truth. Now, please, let me pass." She pushed through the crowd of journalists, ignoring the questions that continued to be shouted. She managed to get on the bus before they could follow her. The bus pulled away, leaving the journalists behind. Isabella sat at the back, trembling. She saw some passengers recognizing her, whispering among themselves. An elderly woman leaned over and whispered, "You did the right thing, dear. Don't let those rich people scare you." Isabella felt tears stinging her eyes, but she also felt a small thread of hope. She was not completely alone. There were people who believed in her. When she arrived at the diner, she found Mrs. Johnson at the door with a grim expression. "Isabella," the manager said, "we need to talk." Isabella's heart sank. She knew what was coming next. "You're going to fire me," Isabella said. It wasn't a question. Mrs. Johnson sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. "I've been getting calls all morning, customers cancelling reservations, suppliers threatening to cut contracts. Someone posted false negative reviews online, saying our diner serves contaminated food. My reputation is being destroyed, and you think firing me will solve this? I don't know, but I know I can't keep going like this. I have employees who depend on me. I have bills to pay." Isabella felt the anger boiling in her chest, but she also understood. Mrs. Johnson wasn't bad. She was just a woman trying to survive in a world where the rich always win. "So, is that it?" Isabella asked. "Victoria got what she wanted." "I'm not saying you lied," Mrs. Johnson said quickly. "I believe you, but I can't let my business sink." Isabella felt the ground opening beneath her feet. "How long?" "Until the end of the week. I'll pay you your last 2 weeks as severance. It's the least I can do." Isabella turned to leave, but Mrs. Johnson grabbed her by the arm. "Isabella, I'm so sorry, truly. You are one of the best employees I've ever had, but I'm being forced to do this." "I know," Isabella said. Her voice came out emotionless. She was too tired to feel anything other than a deep emptiness. She spent the rest of the day working on autopilot, serving tables, smiling mechanically, doing her job. The other employees looked at her with a mix of pity and fear. They all knew what was happening. They all knew that Isabella was being sacrificed. At the end of her shift, when she was putting away her apron in the locker room, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but this time she decided to answer. "Isabella Ferreira," a clear, professional female voice responded. "Yes, my name is Adriana Costa. I'm an investigative reporter for the City Journal. I'm doing a story on your case and would like to talk to you." Isabella hesitated. She had seen what happened when the media got involved, the distortions, the sensational headlines, the half-truths. "I don't know if I want to talk to the press," Isabella said. "I understand your hesitation, but listen. I investigated Victoria Davis and found some interesting things. Things you should know." Isabella felt her heart race. "What kind of things?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone." Can we meet tomorrow in a public place? Isabella thought for a moment. It could be a trap. It could be another way for Victoria to try to manipulate her, but it could also be her only chance to uncover the whole truth. "All right," Isabella said, and they arranged to meet the next day at a cafe on the other side of town. When Isabella hung up, she felt a strange mix of hope and apprehension. That night, while riding the crowded bus home, Isabella saw a news alert on a passenger's phone next to her. The headline read, "Victoria Davis gives exclusive interview. I am a victim of a jealous waitress who wants to ruin my life." Isabella closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The battle was just beginning. When she got home, she found her mother in the kitchen with a worried expression. "This came for you," her mother said, handing her a thick envelope. Isabella opened it. It was a legal summons. Victoria was really suing her. She was asking for $1 million in damages, as well as a full public retraction. Isabella read the entire document, each word feeling like a punch to the stomach. When she finished, she placed the papers on the table and looked at her mother. "She's going to destroy me," Isabella said. For the first time, her voice trembled. "I can't afford a lawyer. I have no way to defend myself. She's going to win, and I'm going to lose everything." Her mother stepped closer and held her face in her hands. "You did what was right," her mother said firmly. "And when we do what is right, the universe conspires in our favor. It may take time, it may be hard, but justice always prevails in the end." Isabella wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe that her courage hadn't been in vain. But at that moment, feeling the weight of the summons in her hands, it was hard to have hope. That night, before going to sleep, Isabella took the card that Robert had given her at the diner, staring at the name embossed in gold letters for a long time. Then, making a decision, she picked up her phone and typed a message. "Mr. Miller, this is Isabella Ferreira. I need help. Your fiancé is suing me, and I have no way to defend myself. You offered help. Is that still on the table?" She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she stared at the screen, waiting. The minutes passed slowly. Just when she was about to give up and go to sleep, the response came. "Isabella, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. Yes, my offer still stands. I will send my lawyer to speak with you tomorrow. And there's one more thing you need to know. The lab results are in." Isabella held her breath, her fingers trembling over the screen. The response took a few seconds to arrive, but when it did, it changed everything. There was a sedative in the spaghetti, a high enough dose to put a child into a deep sleep. Ethan could have died if he had eaten it all. Isabella dropped her phone into her lap. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold it. She had been right. She had seen the truth. Victoria had really tried to drug Ethan. But why? What was the endgame? Robert's last message arrived. "You saved my son's life, and I will make sure Victoria pays for this, even if it's the last thing I do." The next morning, Isabella woke up with renewed determination. The lab results proved she wasn't crazy. She hadn't made anything up. Victoria had truly tried to drug Ethan. Now it was a matter of proving intent and getting justice served. She dressed carefully, choosing the most presentable outfit she had. She knew she would have two important meetings that day. First with reporter Amanda Smith, then with Robert's lawyer. The cafe where Amanda had arranged to meet was small and discreet, tucked away on a quiet street, far from the busy downtown. Isabella arrived a few minutes early and chose a table in the corner with her back to the wall so she could see the door. Amanda arrived right on time. She was a woman in her 40s, with brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, thin-framed glasses, simple but professional clothing. She carried a worn leather briefcase and a digital recorder. "Isabella?" she asked, extending her hand. "Yes, Amanda." They shook hands, and Amanda sat down across from Isabella. She ordered a black coffee and waited for the waiter to walk away before speaking. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Amanda said, pulling the recorder from her briefcase. "May I record our conversation? I assure you nothing will be published without your permission." Isabella hesitated, then nodded. Amanda turned on the recorder and placed it on the table. "Now tell me your version of the events," the reporter began. From the beginning, Isabella shared everything, every detail she could remember. Amanda listened in silence, occasionally jotting down notes, but mostly just paying attention with an intensity that made Isabella feel like her words truly mattered. When Isabella finished, Amanda turned off the recorder and leaned forward. "Now let me tell you what I found out about Victoria Davis," Amanda said, lowering her voice. "She is not who she claims to be." Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Victoria Davis is a fake name, or rather, it's a name she adopted 3 years ago. Before that, she was named Valerie Collins and had a criminal record." Isabella's eyes widened. "What kind of record?" Amanda pulled a folder from her bag and opened it, revealing documents, photos, and printed articles. 7 years ago, Valerie Collins worked as a caregiver for an elderly man named Anthony Stevens. He was a widower, wealthy, and had no children. 3 months after Valerie started working for him, Anthony changed his will, leaving half of his fortune to her. 2 months later, he died. Isabella felt her stomach churn. How did he die? Officially, it was a heart attack, but the family suspected foul play and hired private investigators. They found evidence that Valerie had been administering unprescribed medications to Mr. Anthony, but before they could present the evidence in court, Valerie disappeared, taking the inheritance money and vanishing. Amanda turned a page showing an old photo. It was Victoria, but with darker hair and glasses. The face was the same, but there was something different in the expression, something harder, more calculated. Mr. Anthony's family tried to sue her, but she had covered her tracks well. She used fake documents, opened accounts in tax havens. When they finally managed to track her down, she had already changed her name and appearance. Isabella felt her head spinning. Everything made sense now. Victoria's plan wasn't just to drug Ethan, it was more complex, more sinister. "She wanted Robert's fortune," Isabella said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "If something happened to Ethan, all the inheritance would go to the wife, to her." "Exactly," Amanda confirmed. "And from what I researched about their routine, Ethan often traveled with his father, business trips, vacations to remote places. If he died during one of those trips, far from hospitals, with no witnesses, it could easily be passed off as an accident or sudden illness." Isabella felt nausea rising in her throat. To think she had been so close to a murderer, that she had looked into her eyes, that she had been threatened by her. "Why didn't you take this to the police?" Isabella asked. "I did," Amanda replied. "But it's not that simple. Much of the evidence is circumstantial. We need something more concrete to secure a conviction, and that's where you come in. You are the only eyewitness. Did you see Victoria putting the sedative in Ethan's food? Your testimony, combined with the lab results in her history, may be enough to put her behind bars." Isabella felt the weight of that responsibility fall on her shoulders like a stone. "But she's suing me, she's saying I lied, that I made everything up. She's using her money and power to destroy me. I know, and that's why we need to fight back. I want to publish a piece exposing who Victoria really is, showing her past, her lies, her plan. But I need your permission, because this will bring even more attention to you. It will be a public battle." Isabella was silent for a long moment. She thought of her mother, her simple life, how everything had complicated in just a few days. But she also thought of Ethan, of Anthony Stevens, of how many other victims there could be if Victoria wasn't stopped. "Do the piece," Isabella said. "Finally, tell the truth, even if it costs me everything." Amanda smiled, and there was genuine respect in her eyes. "You are brave, Isabella, more than many people I've met." They talked for a few more minutes, finalizing details. Amanda promised that the piece would come out the next day in both print and online editions. It would be the main headline. When Isabella left the cafe, she felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because there was finally a plan, a way to fight back. Heavier because she knew the coming weeks would be the hardest of her life. She went straight to Robert's lawyer's office. The building was tall, modern, all gleaming glass, the kind of place Isabella had never entered before. She felt small and out of place in the luxurious lobby, with its marble floors and minimalist decor. But the receptionist treated her with respect, checked her name on a list, and directed her to the 12th floor. The lawyer's name was Frank Adams. He was a man in his 50s, with graying hair, perfectly styled, and an impeccable suit. His office had a view of the entire city, with shelves full of legal books and framed diplomas on the walls. "Miss Ferreira," he said, standing up to greet her. "Please, have a seat. Mr. Miller told me everything." Isabella sat in an overly comfortable leather chair. Frank sat across from her, interlacing his fingers on the table and looking her directly in the eyes. "First, I want you to know that you will come out victorious from this situation. Victoria made a mistake by suing you. She gave us the perfect opening to expose all her crimes." "How?" Isabella asked. "We will countersue, not just for damages, but also for attempted murder, witness intimidation, and fraud. We will lay everything out, and with the information that reporter Amanda Smith uncovered, we have enough ammunition." Frank opened a folder and began showing documents to Isabella. They were petitions, counterclaims, compiled evidence. It was impressive to see everything organized that way, transformed into solid legal arguments. "But I need to be honest with you," Frank continued. "This will be a long battle. Victoria has resources, she has connections. She will fight with all her might and will try to break you in the process." "She's already trying," Isabella said. "I was fired. I'm receiving threats. Journalists are stalking me. All of this will get worse before it gets better," Frank admitted. "But I promise I will protect you the best I can. We will get a restraining order against her. We will document every threat, every attempt at intimidation. And in the end, we will use all of this against her in court." Isabella nodded, trying to absorb all of this. It was too much, overwhelming. Frank noticed her expression and softened his tone. "I know it's scary, but you are not alone in this. Robert is on your side. I am on your side, and when Amanda's piece comes out, public opinion will be on your side too." They spent the next 2 hours reviewing everything, signing documents, preparing the legal strategy. When Isabella finally left the office, the sun was already setting. She felt exhausted, but also strangely hopeful. On her way home, her phone rang. It was Robert. "Isabella, did you manage to talk to Frank?" "Yes. I just left his office." "Great. I want you to know that anything you need, anything at all, just ask. You saved my son. I owe my life to you." Isabella felt a lump in her throat. She didn't know how to respond to such gratitude. "How are you, Ethan?" she asked. "Scared, but okay." The doctors examined him thoroughly. "There's no permanent damage. But what if he had eaten the whole plate?" Robert's voice faltered for a moment. "I don't even want to think about it. And Victoria, where is she?" "She disappeared. She's not at her apartment. She's not answering calls. But the police are looking for her. With the lab results and your testimony, they will arrest her as soon as they find her." They talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. Isabella put her phone away and looked out the bus window. The city passed by outside, thousands of lights flickering in the growing darkness. She thought about how her life had changed completely in just a few days, how a single moment of courage had triggered all of this. Part of her wished she could go back, stay silent, avoid all that chaos. But then she thought of Ethan, thought of Mr. Anthony Stevens, thought of all the victims of people like Victoria, people who used charm and manipulation to destroy lives, and she knew she had made the right choice. When she got home, her mother was watching the news. The TV showed a picture of Victoria, followed by the headline, "Wanted, businesswoman accused of attempted murder, disappears." "It's all over the news," her mother said, turning to Isabella. "Everyone is talking about it, and many people are on your side. I saw in the online comments they're calling you a heroine." Isabella didn't feel like a heroine. She felt tired, scared, still processing everything. But there was a small spark of satisfaction knowing that the truth was finally coming to light. That night, as she prepared for bed, Isabella received one last message from an unknown number. Her heart raced, expecting another threat, but when she opened it, the message simply said, "You think you've won, but this is far from over. I always get what I want, always." Isabella blocked the number, but she knew it. It wouldn't help. Victoria was out there somewhere, planning her next move, and Isabella would have to be ready. Amanda Smith's article came out the next morning, as promised. The headline took up the entire front page of the City Journal. Victoria's scheme, con artist, assumed false identity to deceive businessman and attempt to murder stepson. Isabella bought the newspaper at the corner stand and read everything while having coffee in the kitchen. Amanda had done meticulous work. Every detail of Victoria's past was documented there with photos, interviews, public records. The story of Mr. Anthony Stevens was told with compassion and outrage. The plan against Ethan was laid out with brutal clarity, and in the midst of it all was Isabella, described not as a jealous waitress, but as a courageous woman who risked everything to protect a child. Her phone started ringing incessantly, calls from acquaintances, distant friends, even people she barely knew. Everyone wanted to know if she was okay, offer support, express admiration. On social media, hashtags like Justice for Isabella and Everyday Heroine began to emerge, but not all the attention was positive. There were also hate messages, people accusing her of seeking fame, of making up stories. Victoria still had supporters, people who refused to believe that someone so elegant and sophisticated could be a criminal. Isabella tried to ignore it all and focus on what really mattered, ensuring that Victoria was brought to justice. On the third day after the article was published, Isabella received a call from Frank Adams. "Isabella, we have news," the lawyer said. "The police located Victoria." Isabella's heart raced. Where? At the airport. She was trying to catch a flight to Panama using a fake passport, but Interpol had issued an international alert. She was arrested on the spot. Isabella felt her legs go weak. She sat in the nearest chair, gripping the phone tightly, and now she will be formally charged. Attempted murder, identity fraud, use of a false document, witness intimidation. The list is long, and with all the evidence we have, she will hardly get bail. So it's over. Frank hesitated. Not completely. We still have the criminal proceedings to face, but we are in a very strong position, and most importantly, Ethan is safe. Robert is safe. You are safe. Isabella hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. It felt strangely empty. She had expected to feel relief, triumph, joy, but all she felt was a deep exhaustion and a sense of unreality. Her mother entered the kitchen and found her there, staring into space. "Honey, what's wrong?" "They arrested Victoria," Isabella said. "It's over." Her mother pulled up a chair and sat next to her, taking her hand. "So why don't you look happy?" Isabella thought about the question. Why wasn't she happy? I think part of me still doesn't believe it. It feels surreal, like something is going to happen and she will escape again. But she won't escape, her mother said firmly. This time justice will be served. Isabella wanted to believe that, but she had seen so much injustice in the world, so many times that rich and powerful people got away with it, that it was hard to trust completely. In the following days, the story exploded nationally. Television programs discussed the case. Lawyers commented on the legal implications. Victoria became a symbol of everything wrong with people who used money and manipulation to destroy lives. And Isabella, whether she wanted to or not, became a symbol too, a symbol of courage, of doing the right thing, even when it's hard, of not being intimidated by power and money. A week after Victoria's arrest, Isabella received an unexpected invitation. Robert wanted her to come to his house. He said he had something it was important to discuss. Isabella agreed, curious but also apprehensive. She had never been in such a luxurious house. The gate was controlled by security. The entrance had an ornate fountain. The gardens were perfectly manicured. A maid led her to a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a view of the city. Robert was waiting there with Ethan by his side. The boy ran to Isabella as soon as he saw her. "You saved my life," he said, hugging her tightly. "My dad told me everything. You're a hero." Isabella knelt down to be at his level, feeling tears burning in her eyes. "I just did what anyone should do," she said. "But you were the only one who did," replied Ethan. "Everyone was watching, but only you spoke up." Robert stepped closer, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "Ethan is right," he said. "You were the only one brave enough to act, and for that, Ethan and I want to thank you personally and also make you an offer." Isabella stood up, confused. An offer? Robert guided her to the sofa, indicating for her to sit down. Ethan sat beside her, still smiling. "I know you lost your job because of me," Robert began. "And even though Frank assured me that you will receive significant compensation in the lawsuit against Victoria, that could take months, even years, to resolve completely. In the meantime, you need to work. You need to support yourself." "I'll find something," Isabella said, though she had no idea where or how. Her name was in all the newspapers. Some employers might see her as a hero, but others would see her as a problem, as someone who attracted unwanted attention. "I have a proposal," Robert said. "I want to offer you a job at one of my companies, not as a waitress or any manual labor, but as a corporate social responsibility manager. You would be responsible for overseeing our charity programs, ensuring that we are making a difference in the community, protecting employees from any abuse or injustice." Isabella was speechless. It was an opportunity she had never imagined having. A job that would pay well, that would have meaning, that would utilize exactly the qualities she had demonstrated: courage, ethics, commitment to doing the right thing. "I don't know what to say," Isabella stammered. "Say yes," Ethan urged, holding her hand. "Please, then you can stay close to us and I can see you all the time." Isabella looked at the boy, then at Robert. There was genuine sincerity in both of their eyes. It wasn't charity. It was recognition. It was justice. "Yes," Isabella finally said, smiling for the first time in days. "I accept." Robert smiled too, extending his hand. They shook hands, sealing the deal, but then Robert's expression grew more serious. "There's one more thing you need to know," he said. "The police found evidence in Victoria's apartment, journals, notes, detailed plans. She wasn't just planning to drug Ethan, she was planning something worse." Isabella felt a chill. "What do you mean?" Robert hesitated, looking at Ethan. The boy noticed and stood up. "I'm going outside to see the garden," Ethan said, understanding that the adults needed to talk privately. Once the boy left, Robert leaned forward, his voice low and tense. "Victoria was planning to kidnap Ethan. She had contacts with criminals, had a remote location rented in another state. The plan was to drug him at the diner, take him during the confusion, fake a kidnapping, and demand a ransom. But the ransom would never be paid because Ethan would already be dead, and all the inheritance money would go to her as a traumatized widow. Isabella felt nausea rise in her throat. It was worse than she had imagined, much worse. "My God, if you hadn't spoken up that day," Robert continued, his voice trembling slightly. "If you had stayed silent like everyone else, my son would be dead now, and Victoria would be rich, free, probably already planning her next victim." They fell silent for a moment, the weight of that revelation hanging in the air between them. "Will the police use this evidence in the trial?" Isabella asked. "Yes. Frank is working with the prosecutors. With everything that has been uncovered, Victoria will likely get life in prison. She will never be able to harm anyone again." Isabella nodded slowly. It was the outcome that Victoria deserved, but still, it was hard to process the magnitude of it all. Ethan came running back, into the room, holding a book. "Isabella, can you help me with this?" he asked, showing a math book. "I have homework and I don't understand." Isabella smiled, grateful for the distraction from the heavy conversation. She spent the next hour helping Ethan with his homework, while Robert watched with an expression of gratitude and peace that he hadn't had in weeks. When Isabella finally said goodbye and headed home, she felt something new growing in her chest. It wasn't just relief, it was hope. Hope that she had made a real difference, hope that her courage had been worth. It hoped that the future would be better. But then, just as she was almost home, her phone rang. It was Frank Adams, and his voice was tense. "Isabella, we need to talk now. Victoria just escaped from prison." The world seemed to stop. Isabella felt the blood run cold in her veins. "How? When?" "An hour ago. We don't know the details yet, but it seems she had help from the inside. Isabella, you need to go to a safe place now. She swore she would get revenge on you, and now she's free." Isabella looked around the empty street, suddenly feeling as if she were being watched. Every shadow seemed threatening, every sound seemed sinister. "What do I do?" "I've already sent security to your house. They will pick you and your mother up and take you to a safe location. Stay where you are. Don't move. They'll be there in 5 minutes." Isabella leaned against a wall, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. She looked at the dark street, at the windows. The illuminated houses around her contrasted with the starless sky, and she wondered if Victoria was already there, somewhere in the shadows, watching, waiting, planning. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun its most dangerous phase. The 5 minutes stretched like hours. Isabella remained pressed against the wall, her eyes sweeping every movement on the street, every sound amplified by the fear pulsing through her veins. The phone was tightly gripped in her sweaty hand, ready to dial emergency at any second. When she finally saw 2 black cars turning the corner and stopping beside her, the relief almost made her crumble. 2 burly men in dark suits got out, one approaching her while the other scanned the surroundings with trained eyes. "Miss Ferreira, I'm Marcus, head of security for Mr. Miller. Please come with me. We're going to get your mother and take her to a safe location." Isabella got into the car, her legs trembling. Marcus drove quickly but carefully to her house, where the other security car was already parked. Her mother was at the door, a small suitcase in her hands, her face pale but composed. "Mom!" Isabella ran to her, hugging her tightly. "I'm here, sweetheart. It's going to be okay. We'll be fine." They got into the car together. Marcus explained that they were being taken to a safe apartment on the other side of town, a place Robert kept for emergencies. It would have 24-hour security, cameras, alarms, everything they needed. During the drive, Isabella's phone rang. It was Robert. "Isabella, are you safe?" "Yes, we're on our way to the apartment." "Great, Isabella, I need to tell you something. The police found out how Victoria escaped. She had an accomplice inside the prison, a guard she knew from her time as Valerie Collins. He helped her escape in exchange for money. And now, what is the police doing? The entire police force is searching for her. There are roadblocks, surveillance at airports, alerts in all neighboring states. But Isabella, Robert's voice grew more tense. They found something concerning on the guard's phone, messages from Victoria. She's obsessed with you. She blames you for ruining everything and is determined to take revenge before fleeing the country. Isabella closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those words. So, she's coming after me. We're not going to let her get close to you, but I need you to stay in the safe apartment. Don't leave for any reason. Do you understand? I understand, but Isabella knew with a certainty that made her nauseous that Victoria wouldn't give up easily. She was smart, calculating, determined. If she wanted to reach Isabella, she would find a way. The safe apartment was on the 23rd floor of a modern building in the city centre. It was spacious, well-furnished, with large windows offering a view of the city lights below. But to Isabella, it felt like a gilded cage. 2 security guards stood at the door. Marcus conducted a thorough sweep of the apartment, checking all the windows, testing all the alarms. Only when he was satisfied did he leave, leaving Isabella and her mother alone. "Try to rest a bit," her mother said, gently touching Isabella's arm. "We're safe here." Isabella nodded, but she knew she wouldn't be able to sleep. She went to the window and looked out at the city below. Somewhere in that sea of lights, Victoria was hiding, planning, waiting for her chance. The hours passed slowly. Isabella tried to read, watch TV, do anything to distract her mind, but nothing worked. Her mother finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the stress. Isabella covered her with a blanket and returned to the window. It was almost midnight when her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Isabella. Do you miss me?" Isabella's blood ran cold. It was Victoria. She had gotten a new phone, a new number. Before Isabella could respond or block the number, another message came through. It was a photo, a picture taken from outside the building where Isabella was now, showing the illuminated windows of the 23rd floor. "I found you." Isabella recoiled from the window as if she had been shot. Her hands trembled so much that she almost dropped her phone. She ran to the door and knocked, calling for the security guards. Marcus entered immediately, hand on his gun holster. "What is it?" Isabella showed him the messages. Marcus cursed quietly and spoke quickly into the radio, alerting the team. Within seconds, the apartment was on total lockdown. The curtains were closed, extra lights turned off, more security called in. "How did she find out where we are?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Marcus replied, his face tense, "but we won't let her get close. Reinforcements are on the way. The police have been notified." But Isabella felt that something was wrong. Victoria wouldn't have revealed her location unless she was absolutely confident, unless she had a plan. The answer came 10 minutes later when the fire alarm began to blare. Smoke started to seep under the door. "Damn it!" Marcus ran to the door, touched the metal. It was hot. "There's a fire in the hallway." Isabella ran to her mother, shaking her to wake her. "Mom, wake up, we have to get out." Her mother woke up startled, her eyes wide as she saw the smoke starting to fill the apartment. Marcus was speaking rapidly into the radio, but there was no response. The communication had gone down. He tried his cell phone, but there was no signal either. "She blocked communications," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "This was planned." He ran to the window, opened the curtains, and looked down. They were on the 23rd floor. There was no way down, no escape. The smoke was getting thicker. Isabella tore pieces of fabric and soaked them in the sink, handing them to her mother and Marcus to cover their noses and mouths. But she knew that wouldn't be enough for long. Marcus tried the door once more, but it was locked from the outside. Someone had tampered with the electronic locks. They were trapped. "I'm going to have to break it down," Marcus said, preparing to kick the door. But before he could do so, they heard a sound from the other side. Footsteps, someone approaching through the smoke in the hallway. The door slowly opened, and there stood Victoria. She looked different. Her hair was disheveled, makeup smeared, clothes dirty and wrinkled, but her eyes shone with a mix of anger and triumph. In her hand, she held a gun. "Surprise," said Victoria, her voice coming out hoarse through the smoke. She pointed the gun directly at Isabella. "You thought I wouldn't make it to you, that your expensive security and your luxury apartment would stop me." Mark quickly moved to position himself between Victoria and Isabella, but Victoria just laughed. "Don't be an idiot. Get out of the way or I'll shoot you too, Victoria," Isabella said, her voice coming out firmer than she expected. "This won't solve anything. The police already know you're here. There's no way to escape." "I don't care about escaping anymore," Victoria replied. There was something feverish in her eyes, something broken and dangerous. "You destroyed everything, everything. My life, my plans, my future. And now I'm going to destroy you. That's all I have left." The smoke was becoming unbearable. Isabella could hear sirens down below, but they were too far away. They wouldn't arrive in time. "Please," Isabella's mother said, her voice muffled behind the wet cloth. "My daughter only did what was right. She protected a child." "A child?" Victoria let out a bitter laugh. "That spoiled brat who never worked a day in her life, who was born rich and will die rich, while people like me have to fight for every crumb. He didn't deserve that fortune. I did." "You deserve nothing," Isabella said. And now there was anger in her voice too. "You killed an innocent man, tried to kill a child, lied, manipulated, destroyed lives. You are a murderer, and you will pay for everything you've done." Victoria took a step forward, her hand trembling as she held the gun. "I won't pay for anything because when I'm done here, I'll disappear and no one will ever find me again." That's when everything happened. At once, Mark moved to try to disarm Victoria. There was a gunshot. Isabella screamed. Her mother pulled her to the ground, but the shot hadn't hit anyone. It had missed, burying itself in the wall behind them. Mark had managed to deflect the gun at the last second. He and Victoria were now rolling on the floor. She was surprisingly strong, driven by desperation and rage, but Mark was bigger, trained, professional. He finally managed to wrest the gun from her and pin her to the ground. Victoria screamed, struggled, but couldn't break free. Tears streamed down her face, leaving trails in the soot. "It's not fair!" she screamed. "It's not fair! I deserved that life! I deserved it!" That's when the door exploded. Firefighters rushed in, dragging hoses. Police followed closely behind, guns drawn. Within seconds, the apartment was filled with people. An officer took control of Victoria, placing handcuffs on her wrists while she continued to scream incoherently. Another officer helped Isabella and her mother to their feet, guiding them out of the smoky apartment. In the hallway, paramedics waited with oxygen masks. Isabella took a deep breath of the clean air, coughing, her eyes burning. Her mother was beside her, also coughing but alive. Isabella saw when they took Victoria away. She was silent now, her body slumped, finally defeated. Their eyes met for one last moment. There was no more anger there, only emptiness. Robert arrived minutes later, Ethan running ahead of him. The boy hugged Isabella so tightly that she almost lost her balance. "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Ethan repeated, the words tumbling out. "I'm fine," Isabella assured, hugging him back. "We're all fine." Robert placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes shining with emotion. "It's over," he said. "It's really over this time. Victoria is in jail, and this time she won't escape." And he was right. In the days that followed, Victoria was formally charged with an extensive list of crimes, including attempted murder, arson, illegal possession of a firearm, escape from custody, and dozens of other charges. With all the evidence and testimonies, there was no chance of escape. The trial took place 3 months later. Isabella testified, telling her story with clarity and courage. Other testimonies came forward. The family of Mr. Anthony Stevens, the prison guard who had aided in the escape. Experts analyzing the evidence. When the verdict was read, Victoria remained impassive, guilty on all counts. Sentence, over 40 years in a maximum security prison with denial of benefits for years due to the severity of the crimes. When Isabella left the courthouse that day, the sun was shining. Journalists were waiting for her, but this time she was ready. She stood in front of the cameras and spoke with a clear, firm voice. Today, justice was served not only for me, but for Mr. Anthony Stevens, for Ethan, for all the victims of people who use power and manipulation to destroy lives. I learned that doing the right thing is not always easy, but it is always worth it, and that an ordinary person can make an extraordinary difference when they have the courage to speak up. The questions continued, but Isabella walked away, heading toward where her mother, Robert, and Ethan were waiting. They went to have lunch together, a quiet celebration of everything they had overcome. 6 months later, Isabella was in her new office at Robert's company. It was spacious, with a view of the city, but she had decorated it with photos of her family, reminders of what truly mattered. Her work as a corporate social responsibility manager was challenging but rewarding. She oversaw programs that helped vulnerable employees, ensured that no one was mistreated or abused, and created charitable initiatives that truly made a difference in the community. And sometimes, when she had a free moment, she would look out the window and think about how her life had changed. A single moment of courage had triggered it all. It had come at a high cost: sleepless nights, constant fear, the feeling of always being in danger. But it had also saved a life. She had put a criminal behind bars, proving that ordinary people can stand up to the powerful and win. Her phone rang. It was Ethan sending a picture of himself at the park with his dad, both smiling. "Thank you for saving me. You are my hero." Isabella smiled, put her phone away, and returned to work. There was much to do, many people to help, many injustices to fight against, and she was ready because she had learned the most important lesson of all. Never lower your head when you see something wrong. Always have the courage to speak up, always fight for what is right, even when it is scary, even when it is difficult, even when it seems impossible, because in the end, doing the right thing is always worth it. The end.